The sequel to Twister, Twisters, is out now, and everyone is absolutely raving about it. But why? Is it just because of Glen Powell, the amazing superstar actor? Are we just craving a summer blockbuster? Or is there something more behind this whirling success? Welcome to Easily Entertained. I am your host, Bryson Olson, here to talk about all things entertainment. Today we are talking about the new movie, Twisters, and we will start with Devil in the Details. Take a look at this frame from the start of Twisters. What do you see? Well, I'll tell you what I see. I see some reminiscence of the original Twister. You have a Dorothy on the trailer here. You have a slightly older looking car driving into a very hazy area. It just feels a lot like the old Twister movie. But you also have something new here. You have these yellow barrels that catch your eye, so clearly these are important to the scene, but you aren't sure why yet. With these details at the beginning of the movie, it sets a good standing point of the world of the film. You get some of the old and some of the new to kind of establish the modern storm chasers while leaning into what is going to come later in the movie. So now I want you to look at this frame. So this frame is a little bit different from the other one that we saw. It is shot a lot more like a newer film is. It's a bit wider of a shot. Not even just a bit, it's very wide, giving the full scope of the landscape. You have a modern drone here that's flying alongside the cars. You have a more rugged pair of vehicles here with a more up-to-date fancy vehicle kind of trailing behind. This is a lot more present in the movie's world and establishes just how the storm-chasing landscape has changed from the beginning of the movie. You have the people who are doing it more for fun, so that's kind of the more rugged vehicles, while you have the scientists who are in the more fancy decked-out vehicle. While not explicitly saying these things are different, details like this are going to be subconsciously noticed by you as an audience and make the world of Twisters feel so real. That's why we like things like this, is because those subtle details just add to the realness of it. In interviews, you can tell that the director really put effort into hammering out some of these tiny little details. They wanted to film actually in Oklahoma to get an authentic feel. They originally were going to film it, I believe, in Atlanta, in Georgia, where a lot of movies are filmed. There's a lot of sets out there, but the locations were just not it. They wanted the real authenticity of Oklahoma. So in particular, the director, who I believe is from Oklahoma or lived there at one point, he really wanted red dirt roads to kind of add to it. So the director said in an interview that verisimilitude is very difficult. And he's talking about all the real details that they wanted to include in the movie to actually let you as the audience get sucked in. They did it so much that even like dirt on people's clothes, like a farmer, it's going to collect in certain ways. And while that may not be noticeable to you as someone who like lives in the city or wherever you live, to a farmer who would watch this movie, they would notice that tiny detail. And even if you don't recognize it, it's subconsciously felt that it's more real. It's very deliberate on how they're making things dirty. And that's just an interesting detail. Even theater experiences like the 4DX stuff that has been going on for this movie, the details that are provided with that experience are thought out in ways that you can't imagine. They want you to be a part of the movie. They want you to feel the details, and it just makes it feel that much more real. It's what you want from a movie like this. You want something that pushes the boundaries of what reality can be, and beyond just the details you see, there are also the details that you really need to feel, which brings me to raising the stakes. While fun action visuals are always good to see on the big screen, you're not really going to stick around without good characters. And how you make a good character is you have to give them some personal stakes in the story. What do these characters have in their life that makes them care about the events of the story? And in Twisters, this is particularly shown with our main character, Kate. We see her in the beginning of the movie as a passionate young storm chaser and a meteorologist. She's hell-bent on what she calls taming a tornado, essentially giving the tornado certain particles that will suck away its moisture, causing it to cool down and making the tornado collapse on itself. And stick around, because we will be talking about the reality of that in a little bit. However, at the beginning of the movie, during this experiment, pretty much everything goes wrong and is taken from Kate. The experiment doesn't work, and 3 of her friends that were fellow meteorologists wanting to help the experiment died right in front of her. As a result, she runs from her fear of tornadoes now, and she goes to New York. And from a storytelling standpoint, this is fantastic. She now has trauma, which I know that sounds crazy to say, but she has trauma from tornadoes, something that she loved, but it's been ripped away from her and it caused her to run. And it took a lot from her, and it left a scar on her both physically as well as mentally. This becomes very integral to her character later as she gets brought back to Oklahoma to try and chase storms again. Now she has to face her fear and get back into the groove of things. During this initial return, she has a return to her fears as well. And you as the audience want her to overcome it. You want to see her get back in the swing of things. And she does, and that's very rewarding to see. But the real impact of her trauma is noticed a bit later when she has the opportunity for some further research and understanding of tornadoes, and even has a chance to try and do her taming experiment again. But she decides to abandon that in the midst of it in order to go help people of a nearby city. While it's not flat out said that Kate wants to help people because of her trauma, it's a subtle motivation of her character. Her experiment is to help the people of her home to not be terrified of tornadoes as much. A lot of damage could be prevented if you could stop a tornado from happening. When a tornado gets out of control, Kate wants to go help people and make sure they are okay. And eventually the experiment works, and that further supports her idea of wanting to tame it. And this just helps you connect super heavily with Kate's character. She has a lot of empathy, and you as an audience can really connect with that empathy, and makes you want to follow her journey a lot more. And as we go through her story arc, you see her at her height. She falls, she rises, she falls again, and then she rises even stronger for the next time. And that is how you write a very good character who is passionate about what they do while also still having some of their flaws. Even if they are good to a fault, that can become a problem. How does it affect the other characters in the story? And it shows that throughout the film, and I really like that. She loves the world around her, and her emotions are grounded within reality, which makes it so powerful. And speaking of more reality, that brings us to Chasing the Storm. When the whole focus of a movie is following a kind of natural weather disaster that real people experience every year, there has to be some real accuracy behind it, or people are going to notice. You can over-dramatize it a little bit for a movie and make it larger than life, but it has to be rooted in reality. The tornadoes in Twister have done just that, in how they were simulated and brought to life with the effects as well as the real practical effects used on set. Something that carried over from the original Twister film was the sound design that really gave the tornado a voice. Apparently, wolves, horses, and seal noises were all added into the tornado sounds to give it more depth and to give it some more uneasiness. The director said it was like turning the tornado into a monster. It was their movie monster, and a monster has to have a roar. And it also needs to have a face. It needs to be menacing. And holy crap, did they make it menacing. And while fascinating at the same time. For the smaller ones that you see earlier in the film, it makes you want to be in the cars with the storm chasers. But the big ones, the ones with all the destruction and power behind them, they come off as very intimidating. But the feeling that comes from all that is because of how real they tried to make them on screen. On set, they used jet engines and would be throwing debris like branches, paper, wood, like just into the wind stream to really simulate the tornado and actually have it feel like the actors are in it and not just that they're on a green screen. They had scientists on set that would help supervise and give advice on what would happen during a real tornado or a storm chase, and the people behind it just knew exactly what they were doing. And you got to have the people behind it to actually make it feel real. You need the people that see it every day to actually tell you this is how it's gonna happen, and that's not how it would happen. And I'm sure you're wondering, is it actually possible to tame a tornado? And technically, yes, it is possible. In an interview with Dr. Sean Waugh, he said that we do see nature choking itself out with cold air like this all the time, but humans causing it is more of a Hollywood invention. In theory, you need about 30 tons of material, which is crazy. That would be so much. And they already say in the movie, oh, you're going to need a ton of this stuff. And they kind of overplay it a little bit for the movie just because the average person, whether it's a scientist or not, is not going to be able to get 30 tons of material, let alone haul it fast to a tornado. So while not really being feasible, it is a real theory that in theory, of course, could be possible. Being able to have the know-how that makes the on-screen appearance of these twisters be just as real as the real thing is incredible. They made the science as accurate as they could within a Hollywood blockbuster. They gave us real characters with real personal stakes and emotion, and made sure that all the little details that may not be noticed at first are just right. And that is exactly why Twisters is storming through cinemas. So time for our rating of Twisters. If you don't know our rating scale, you can go ahead and take a look here. From worst to best, it is garbage, once is fine, right mood, quotable, go to, and all day, every day. And I know for all those Glen Powell fans, I'm going to disappoint here real fast, because I'd say for Twisters, I'm kind of in between quotable and go to, just because like most of it is pretty good, but there are some points where I'm like, I feel like we could have upped the ante here just a little bit, but for the most part, it is a absolutely fantastic movie. And since we mentioned quotable, we got to go with the quote from the movie that was kind of used in a lot of the marketing, which is,
you don't face your fears, you ride them.
And now for our question of the week. This question is just to get you invested in the discussion about this week's episode and relating to Twisters. This week's question is, would you be a storm chaser? For me personally, I would do it for any of the small ones, like an EF1, maybe an EF2, because I think that would be pretty fun. And, you know, it's not too small, like it's not very minimal. From where I live in Utah, it was a couple of years ago, we had, I believe it was an EF0, so nothing like crazy, but still did a lot to the Utah area that doesn't really get tornadoes all that much. But I think to storm chase an EF1 or an EF2 would be pretty interesting. But as soon as it gets too big, yeah, get me the heck out of there. No thanks. So let us know if you would be a storm chaser in the comments. And that does it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Easily Entertained. If you did, be sure to give us a like and a follow so that you can be notified of all our latest episodes whenever they come out. And until next time, bye.